My early influences playing, I really started out as a drummer, really. And I started out as a drummer and I was doing lots of gigs around Manchester, and then I got a job in quite a really large music shop in Manchester. And then I started to meet more people and listening to lots of different kinds of music. And then I discovered percussionists more. Fergus?
How did I get into it? I just always wanted to hit things, I think. I just never wanted to do anything else, to be honest. And same thing, I wanted to be a drummer. I went to 2 concerts when I was young. I went to see Queen. I remember Roger Taylor coming out front with his little bass drum and a tambourine and doing a kind of quasi unplugged thing, which really appealed to me. The other gig I went to was Buddy Rich at the Croydon Fairfield Halls, and those 2 things I think set me on the road to ruin, really. I mean to what I'm doing. And you, Pete?
Yeah, well, I started going. I was into the punk thing. I was a late starter at 19, and then I was walking past a drum shop one day and saw an advert in the window, so went in and had drum lessons, and then got into that, and then discovered percussion by chance. Discovered tabla and the whole world of Indian rhythms and
absolutely. Yeah.
And that, once as we all know, once you get into that sort of thing, it's like.
That's a whole lifetime.
Yeah, it is a whole lifetime study.
Luckily, I'm really old, so. Miles, how about you?
Listening to my dad's records and picking out initially listening to the drums, but then starting to want to understand what was happening in the background, the little noises that were going on. When I actually started as an alto player. And,
did you? Wow.
Yeah, but I was sort of like smacking it and hitting it rather than blowing it. I kept wanting to see what the keys would do. But yeah, more and more listening to Art Blakey records and whatever, and the Latin stuff that my dad would play. And I was like, what are the other things that are working around the drums? So that kind of was my. I was like, I want to know what that is. Yeah. So that kind of got me going.
The weird thing is about me is my mum and dad, the same when you were saying about your mum and dad's records, my mum and dad used to play a lot of Motown and Earth, Wind and Fire. So on a Sunday morning I remember getting up and listening to that would wake me up. And I'd always listen. And the weird thing is when you're young and you always check who's on the album covers, it always seemed to be more or less the same kind of players, people like Paulino da Costa. So it was Paulino da Costa or Ralph MacDonald or those guys, Eddie Bongo Brown. They always seem to be the same kind of people on those records, and that's what I sort of aspired to want it to be.
Absolutely.
We didn't have any music when I was a kid.
Really?
Yeah, nothing. Virtually nothing until I got into the punk thing. That was my first kind of exposure to any music. So I was kind of like
Amazing that being a punk thing though, and then turned into an Indian thing.
Exactly. That's left field. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
It really is.
I think it's good to have an open mind. I think it's one of the things that bonds us as percussionists now is this creative open mind approach to.
Yeah. Absolutely, everything is potentially percussion. Yeah. It's just like a huge vast world. Yeah. It's never ending. I know it's a nightmare trying to play it all.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of worms. Yeah.
What appealed to me was taking up percussion instruments because I was surrounded by really good drummers, and I wanted to play along with them. So to understand, I think that there's a lot of drummers that think they can play percussion, and when you get into that, playing percussion, picking holes and space in between what a drummer's doing, it becomes a whole different thing. And for me, it was a great opportunity because I got to play with loads of great drummers, and I still do, I get to play, and I'm playing percussion, so even though I play a little bit of kit still, I'm known as a percussionist and it's great because I get to play with all my friends and people that influence me, What about you, Miles? Who do you think?
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. I was kind of fascinated at how I was going to work with a drummer. I mean, I was listening to both, but I went down the percussionist path initially, but I wanted to find a way to complement the drummer. I mean, I know there's more to that, but just learning to find the spaces and yeah, hanging out with great drummers and understanding what they're doing. I kind of knew I was going to head towards the kit as well.
Yeah.
So I thought, you know, what better way?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I was a bit of a hermit, really. You know, I guess I did the drum set thing, and then I kind of got into the Indian thing, and I literally just focused on that for 6 years. You know, and so it was quite a long time into my development that I started, you know, working extensively with you know, other percussionists in the way that you would in the West, because in the Indian thing is a lot of unison stuff. So if you get a group of tabla players or whatever together, they play unison parts together, not like the interlocking stuff that you find with either between a drum set player and a percussionist, or, you know, groups of percussionists.
Yeah.
What about you, Fergus?
I think I was more kind of into drummers that were very percussion based. You know, so I was kind of really into Bill Bruford when he was doing a lot of that kind of, and he had unusual setups. I remember he had a table full of Simmons pads. They're all tuned melodically. He used to play across it.
Really.
Yeah, and the guitarist used to stand on the other side and used to play across each other. It was very visually entertaining as well. And Stuart Copeland I was into, who was obviously a very percussive drummer and full of offbeat rhythms and, you know, different types of sounds, a huge dynamic within the kit, which always kind of appealed to me as well. But people like Airto and, you know, and then I looked to people like Danny Cummings, people like that, who had a lot of fantastic pop gigs at the time, and I thought, well, that's a way out. You know, I can become a pop star without being a pop star. You know, I can travel around the world, make loads of money, and meet lots of nice women, and drink too much, and it worked. Yeah.
I mean, growing.
Once you moved on from triangle.
No, I haven't. I'm still on that. There's a lifetime in that.
I won't mind, but I've been on tour with him, and he hardly drinks when he goes out anyway. I think for me as well, that the same thing. You know, growing up, I was totally inspired by Louis Jardim, Danny Cummings. Everything that came out on record in London seemed to have Louis Jardim, Danny Cummings, Miles on it.
Frank
Ricotti, certainly. Ray Cooper.
You
know,
so
for westernised music, you know, I mean, I remember somebody gave me an audio CD of Miles doing loops with Danny, you know, which really got me into wanting to play those parts, and I'd play along with them with my drums, and I'd really understand some of the, you know, how things would lock in. So for me, you know, three influences right here for me, really. You know,
absolutely. I think we're all watching each other, weren't we?
Yeah.
There's always something to learn from what's happening over there.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? How it slots together. You know, how, you know, even whether it's 2 percussionists, 3 percussionists, or you know, a drum set player and a percussionist, how the parts slot together with frequency or density, and you know, rhythm choice, rhythm variety, or straight. You know, there's all so many considerations.
Absolutely,
and colours. You know, which is the way I see things in colours a lot of the time as well.
Nice.
You know, when I'm playing something, or if they ask me to do some overdubs, I see things in colours rather than see things in sounds. So certain instruments reminds me of a colour. You know. Maybe that's just me, but there you go.
I like that.
Yeah. Moving on from that, first sort of gig. What did you sort of do first gig?
It was a punk band, smashing my drums up at the end of it.
Fantastic.
And the whole, you know, shebang.
Fantastic.
One groove at the various buff chat at numerous different tempos.
That's all I know. That's all I know to do.
I consider that versatile at the time, to be honest with you.
But that was one of the things that was so different back then than is now. If you wanted to be in a band, there was that kind of new wave punk ethos that anybody could pick up an instrument and play.
Yeah.
You know, with no knowledge, you just sat down, and the fact that you didn't really know what you were doing, you kind of listened to music, and you'd invariably make mistakes. Yeah. But that would maybe become part of your character.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, rather than kind of this kind of, I mean, YouTube is great for many reasons, but you often, if you want to learn how a fill was done, you just YouTube it, and there's like endless amounts of people showing you how to break it down, and you're instantly doing it correctly, which perhaps takes some of the individuality out of it.
Yeah, and the personalities. You know, the thing about, you go back to, you look at players like Budgie and the guy who did the first Adam and the Ants album, and all those, they were so unique, such unique.
No, that's right.
Personality players.
Yeah.
Things that get ironed out a little bit with technology.
It's true.
And,
What was your first sort of gig, Miles?
Well, I mean, I've got literally my first school gig, you know, at sort of 12, and I was the one standing there and thinking I'm not even going to be able to walk on the stage, terrified. But then the rest of the band, the drummer threw up, you know.
Oh, really?
So one of those ones. So that's the kind of school experience. But I did it, and I got through it. But I can't think what my first... Those wine bars when I was about 15, 16. I was doing sort of Latin gigs and stuff like that.
Percussion or drums?
Percussion, yeah. I mean, it's all percussion up until about 19 or 20, and then I was quietly trying to shed the drums and get it together, because basically a couple of very dear friends were kicking my butt, saying, that's what I was saying earlier, you know, they've just like...
There's not going to be a percussion chair soon.
Well, yeah, learn some 2 and 4, have it in, I can call you for other work, you know, expand your vocabulary, and also my fascination with how I'm going to work with the drummer and kind of explore that by actually playing the 2 and the 4, and how I'm going to work around that, have a bit more understanding of what they're doing, which I think we should all do. You know, I try and do that with singers, you know, try and actually, I can't sing, but I will sing through a song sometimes and just try and understand what that's about, and actually what my role is. You know, it's sort of, I've learned all those things because of wanting to play drums and understand what a drummer's having to do. So
the interesting thing about that as well is that it's, you know, if you're just focused on one instrument, like, you know, either drum set or percussion or whatever, you don't necessarily hear it from the outside. I remember when I first started putting projects together, where I wasn't playing drum set, and realised that actually, and that was the thing with Bill Bruford actually, is that during the, you know, writing and performance, you know, moments, you didn't really focus at all what the drum set player was playing technically, because it was all about what was being generated with the music, which is a different abstract than, you know, you know, so completely focused just on one element of music. And, you know, what you're saying there is like learning and taking part in different elements of the music making spectrum broadens your whole approach to the instrument, whatever instrument.
As best you can, try and understand what others are doing in the room, you know, like that just starts to open your ears. Yeah. What's my role? What can I do to expand the music, and appreciate what everyone else's role is, what they're having to do to make this move forward, you know.
And maybe that's more appropriate for percussion, because your role isn't always concrete.
Exactly.
You know, if you're the drummer, you're invariably going to play 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
Yeah, exactly,
You're often trying to slot yourself in and find where there is space and what the music needs, what it's lacking, how you can enhance it.
Well, I started listening closely to guitarists, particularly because of the percussive element. I'm like, okay, my instrument's not a million miles away from guitar.
Yeah,
so like in studios, I'm sure you've all had the same feeling. It's like, what am I interrupting? What, you know, you can play a conga part and you realise there's a really nice guitar part. Well, I've got to kind of maybe work around that a little bit. But it's only when I started to think that way, having played a bit of kit and realising, you know,
and what frequencies are going to work within that, of course.
Exactly,
And leaving space.
And finding the space, actually. Finding the gaps where you can play.
What about you, Fergus? Your first gig?
First gig was probably at school, but I think a lot of the gigs I got initially came out of the back of Melody Maker, you know, which was the kind of go-to place for I remember auditioning for Zig Zig Sputnik. Do you remember?
Did you?
Wow.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And you know, I went in the room. There's just
an exclusive.
A kick drum and a snare drum and a hi hat, and that was all there was. And I was about 15, you know. Wow. And I went in there, and they just put on this track at huge volume. Of course, great. My hair was, and you know, played the track, and they came out and they said to me, "You must have had a troubled childhood, the way you're hitting those drums." and I didn't get the gig, you know. But one of the first professional gigs I did get was out of the back of Melody Maker. It was a band called EMI, and I kind of, you know, just went from there.
When I came to London, it was Melody Maker was on strike for like 9 months. It's like really annoying.
So that was the end of that.
It was just to look in the back of Melody Maker for equipment as well. I mean, my first set of congas came out of the back of Melody Maker, and I remember answering an advert and going to Notting Hill Gate, and congas belonged to Mick Jones from The Clash.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, he was in this smoke-filled studio in the basement. They kind of opened the door and I couldn't see him, you know. Wow. But I walked in, and, "Oh, Mr. Jones, go a set of congas, please."
Cool.
So,
Wow.
it's funny.
Fantastic.
What make were they?
Natal.
Yeah. Wow.
Natal. Alan Sharp,
I mean, gear-wise, the first congas I got were a present from the very dear George Frederick.
Oh yeah.
When he worked at Pearl, and it was Afro percussion, and I got a gig I got a gig playing percussion in a house band at the Ritz. So it was the house band was by Mecca, top. I think it was top rank then. It was like working every Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, every weekend. So I didn't really have any social life, but I was a lot younger then anyway. And playing in the house band, and what we did was 3 sets, and it was the highest chart climber. So whatever we did that weekend, we had a great house band, great musicians in the band, and great singers, and we just covered. So we did a load of Motown, a load of everything, you know, and then it was just a free for all. It was like a cattle market. So basically, I needed some drums, and George very kindly at the time said, "I'll send you some drums up, see what you think of them." And I was playing Afro congas. I wish I still had them actually.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what happened. I really don't know what happened to them, but yeah. But they were great, you know, and bless him for actually sending me, you know, and believing in me and going, "I'll just send you them." You know?
Yeah,
sure.
it's a real kick of energy, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I saw him recently as well and thanked him, you know. Saw him and
Oh,
thanked
nice.
him. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he didn't know what I was talking about, but it was all on time.
My first percussion instrument was a set of tablas.
Really?
Yeah, I went down to
Straight in at the deep end.
Yeah, really, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
That knows.
That was the first percussion instrument I learned. You know,
Yeah,
so
amazing. Yeah.
I was never thinking of getting into percussion. It's just, you know, it happened by accident, really. And originally just to complement my drum set playing, but then just got totally into it. And also the guy next door had just been, you know, let out of the mental hospital, and if I drummed, he would come and throw stuff at the window and go just like completely crazy at me.
Oh, wow.
So I was feared for my life, to be honest with you. And so I could practice the tabla, you know.
Okay.
Oh, right.
So I remember going off to Southall, getting the drums. Car broke down. 6 hours waiting for the AA. Finally got home, and you know, with the tabla,
Was that Alcoholics Anonymous?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You get the you know, you tune it with a hammer. You know, you play tabla, and then you with the bass tabla, you kind of go round with the end of the hammer and just
Yeah.
straight through the head. Hammer. After I got home, you know,
Wow.
10-hour day.
Wow.
Yeah.
So role as of a percussionist in a band, within your band setting and your experiences, Miles.
Whew. Where do I start? Well, again, back to what we were saying earlier, I guess trying to complement the drummer and then take that to the next level, trying to complement the music, which is also ultimately the aim, and finding a way to, I think, give 99% of the time a forward motion to the groove, and lift a chorus or cover a section where maybe there's a breakdown or something, and you kind of find a pattern that will sort of suit. So that's one element of the role for me.
I kind of think in you know, exactly that, but also in terms of, you know, whether I'm going to do something that's interlocking or unison or
stacking.
interlocking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And also I kind of listen for frequencies of what a drummer's playing. So if it's a real tom-tom sort of thing, low frequencies with the drum set, or with the music generally, actually, maybe not even drum set at all, but try and just think in different frequencies, so top end stuff might work. You know, if it's more of a standard kind of drum set groove type thing, then stuff in the middle is going to work pretty well, depending on how busy the hi-hat is. I might go to some top end things, but frequencies, and then like you was talking about colours, but literally, you know, colours of. Because one of the things that I find is how much the listener is thrown, you know, when there's just a sound like those bells you've got, for example, you know, that sort of sound that the listener is thrown, and they're almost taken to a different place in the world where you hear, not necessarily, you know, in an ethnic location, but, you know, a bell might just take you to, I don't know, a beach somewhere, or, you know,
Definitely
stuck up a palm tree or something, you know.
I mean, a lot of people, I hope you don't mind me saying, but I know that you do so much of the Indian stuff, and you do so much online with tabla and kanju, but I know that you do, which isn't really covered that much, you do a lot of sessions really in the pop world as well, which isn't, would you approach that differently to, you know, working with a producer who then, would you take all your sounds to a session and then work, you know, within a pop setting?
Yeah, well, I get as much information as I can.
Yeah.
Because ideally you want to be as effective with as smaller, compact setup as you can.
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing, because otherwise, you're confused by the array of choice, as is the client. I think it's changed actually over the last, for me personally, over the last 30 years. I think certainly in the pop world, you're more inclined to do less performance and more loop-based approach to things, which is a shame, because I much prefer the idea of even you get half a minute into a song and then they'll stop you and that's enough. Got that?
Yeah, sure. I did an album recording once, and percussion was the first thing to go on there, and all they did was play a load of click tracks at different tempos.
Yeah.
Give me 8s, give me 16s, give me somebody, give me inversions of that, and do no displacements, and that was it. And then when I consequently heard the album later on, I was like, wow, if I'd known the music was like that, that's not what I would have played. I could have been far more musically effective. But I think there's a lot in dynamics, there's a lot in kind of hocketing, if you like, or playing in between what the drummer plays, and not stepping on their feet. So if the drummer's got a load of crash cymbals, 16, 18-inch crash cymbals, you don't go along with a load of 16. You have different options, and often I do fills before the drummer is likely to do a fill. So I might fill on the bar before the last bar of the section, or just afterwards, to try and avoid what they're doing.
I think that's a positive, that we all play kit, and you sort of feel where the drummer's going to play fills, and you can then work either side, or sort of not play where they're playing, or not play at all really where they're playing a fill. I think that comes with, because we're lucky that we've all had that experience of playing drum kit as well. I think there's a lot of percussionists though that would probably do that.
No.
I've seen quite a few percussionists who do play for the sake of playing things, and it's all too busy. It's all really busy.
But I think the relationship you have with the drummer as a percussionist is much like any other relationship. It has to be, mutually respectful. You have to know how to sort of navigate yourself if you have an argument, or you come to, and everybody's got an ego, so you have to kind of be aware of that, and just be sensitive.
And keep that in check.
And keep that in check, and just get along with people. Or try to.
I mean, as far as setting up tracks and sounds, listening to the people that I listened to, obviously, when I was growing up, people like my great friend Louis Conti and Bashiri Johnson and Ayrto, it was amazing, and Paulino da Costa. It was amazing how they would colour the sounds, and then what became really weird to me was percussive being melody as well. The first time I sort of saw our friend Mino Sinero play, who just really, the way he played the wave drum, the Korg wave drum, and became really creative like that, and was playing all those voices, and then playing underneath it. So he'd set up the sequence and then play along with it. I mean, that for me, when I first saw that, was like nothing I'd ever seen. For me personally, and I think that as a melody, obviously, with a lot of it in Indian music, that's when tabla, the voices and the sounds. To
a point, there's melody, but I mean, there's more, like Miles' conga playing. Yes. I find it very. I think one of the most melodic players actually. Really interesting melodic parts that he comes up with. With tabla tarang, you've got, you can play melody to a point. Yes. In a way, there's kind of a melody between the harmonics and the different notes on tabla to a degree.
You almost play, when you play, hopefully I use the right term, let's just go with a raga, there's like a whole journey, there's a whole language, these long beautiful passages, which I don't know how you retain for a start. That's incredible.
It's a lot. I mean,
that's a lot of melody.
Because it's phonetics as well. You learn with phonetics. There was an experiment done with maths where they did a lot of maths that with similar level students, but one was colour coded and the other wasn't. And the group that were colour coded won, much higher marks in the exams. And the theory was that it would go into both sides of the brain at the same time. And similar researches have been done with phonetics and rhythm. With the idea being that it goes into both sides of the brain. And I've tried it with some education of speaking a rhythmic passage. So even if someone's learning bongos or a non-Indian instrument, to teach them a rhythmic passage with syllables, and then a similar level student without syllables. The one without syllables takes that much longer to get it. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
You know, really
I mean, I've found that even just simple things like Cascro, you know, dun, 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 dun. I like percussion, I don't like singing. I like percussion, I don't like and they instantly get it.
That's true.
Instantly get it.
Absolutely,
It's very true.
Because you've got things to, you know, something to hook it on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure somebody said that, you know, if you can sing it, you can say it, you can play it, you will get there, and it won't take that long. And
it's actually with tabla, there are some things, I mean, some things are so fast that you can't really say them anyway. But it actually, there's a correlation between being able to speak it and being able to play it. There are certain things that, if I can't speak it, I can't play it. Not necessarily rhythmically, but technically. You know, that's really interesting. I still haven't worked that one out. So I can't play it.
We all get called into sessions, and people say, and you say, well, what do you want me to bring? And they say, well, just bring everything. And then you need to get a truck.
Several trucks.
But what would be really, if you get called to do a pop session? Nowadays in London, around
it's about
London.
information, isn't it? So you try and extract as much information as you can prior to the thing. You try and do your homework. You try and learn something about the artist, what they're like historically, where they might be trying to go with it now. Hopefully they will send you some music up front, so that you can make some notes and have some options and ideas. If they don't, then you're on the fly. But I mean, the standard things I suppose you would take would be, you know, box of hand percussion would be, you know, probably the go-to thing, standard thing. And then you'd work from there. So if it was an orchestral thing, obviously you might have to hire some stuff in. If it was a more Latin thing, you'd go down that. If it was a more Middle Eastern thing, or you know, maybe it's a soundtrack thing where you just go in with waterphone and wind wands or whatever. So I think every situation is completely different.
That's very true.
And you just have to try and, I mean, a lot of it is people management. And getting on with people, and you know, that's a big part of it, I think, because some sessions don't go that well if you haven't got that connection. And education, you know, trying to explain the potential of what you can do to producers whose specialism isn't percussion, and they might only know percussion as being, you know, tambourine and shaker or whatever. And you get to the end of a session, and the producer goes, I'm just going to make a cup of tea, can you do a quick tambourine take for me? Doesn't even listen to it, you know. So in that instance, what I try and do is like do an arrangement of the song as I'm doing it. So give them different options in the verses, in the choruses, in the middle eight maybe, and just build throughout the thing, so that if at some point later on when they're mixing, they turn around and go, oh, all I've got is 16th notes all the way through the track. No, in fact, you've got 3 or 4 or half a dozen different patterns throughout the track to choose from, so that they can then slot it in at a later stage. I think that's kind of effective.
Recently I did a session, an album, and there was nothing. I went in completely blind, and they wanted, all I knew is they wanted percussion on quite a bit of the album, and I went in there, and then they played at me, and then I had to play, which was, I don't always have to do this, but they asked for variations. So what they asked was, that's great, but can you maybe do it another way? So maybe just conga patterns, maybe doing, because it's a pop thing, maybe not playing the slaps on the downbeats, maybe they want them on the upbeats, or they want them somewhere else. Not playing as much palm tip in between, so it doesn't actually get in the way of the hi-hat. Talk about frequencies and being too busy as well. Have you done that?
I totally resonate with that. And I think when I first started, because I was excited and I was young and I didn't necessarily know, but I just wanted to throw everything I had at every session I did. Check what this does, check this out. But slowly working with good producers, they kind of helped me understand a bit more about space. You know, it was an education for me, and it's okay to be confident to just play a tambourine on the 2 and the 4 and the chorus and not feel the need to do multiple instrumentation. You know, you sort of have to let go of your ego a little bit. And like I totally agree with you about trying when you can, depending on the personnel, maybe being able to give them a few options with like maybe 2 or 3 shakers, played slightly different feel. I mean, even, you know, we all probably kind of learn to play a shaker our own little way, but we all kind of understand that thing that producers go, oh, I love that sexy kind of feel when you play the shaker, when you kind of give it that lilt. But quite a lot of pop records
don't want it.
It's very tight, straight 16th, and that used to really hurt me when I was, you know, in my early 20s. I was like, can't I just, but check what this does. But eventually I kind of went, okay, no, it's a pop record. I've got to understand how this has got to work, and I learned something, you know. So, I mean, probably, I think it was Alex Acuna who said, you know, somebody asked him a similar question, like, what would you take to a session, or what have you used the most? And I kind of agree that pretty much shakers and tambourines have been the mainstay of many of the sessions I've done. So it's always a joy then when somebody goes, no, you can. The door's open. Play some congas, bring some other things, an oudou, whatever. Yeah, you know, occasionally you get to take it further. But taking pride in the simple is something I think I've learned over.
For that, definitely.
You know,
I'm being aware of space. There's that story about a famous percussionist in LA who went on his first session, and he'd learnt all these conga chops, you know, and he gets into the room and he just blasts all the conga chops. Yeah. They said, a bit simpler, so we kind of did the same thing again. They said, okay, that's fine, thank you, we've got it. So he went and had lunch. He's loading his gear out into the car park, and a mate of his is coming in. He says, what are you doing here? Oh, I'm coming to a session with so-and-so. I've just done that session. No, I haven't. You learn quickly, don't you?
You learn quick,
I tell you what changed for me a lot, my attitude to sessions, is when I started doing a lot more my own projects and putting things together and finding that outlet for, you know, what I wanted to do musically, which wasn't necessarily, you know, catered for on sessions. And it meant that I could completely separate the two approaches and kind of just think of myself as it's guttural thought, but I'm just like the producer's sound module, you know what I mean? You go in there and, you know, you press the buttons. I mean, if you want me to compose, if you want me to actually write parts, then that's a different discussion. Otherwise, you've got to know what the buttons to press on the sound module. Otherwise, you're not going to get it. You know, and I know we're talking about having the right attitude and all that, but I think slightly differently to that. You know, always been a little bit controversial with a lot of people that I work for in that way. But you know, I think people have got to know what, if you want the best out of something, you know, if you want the best out of your new car, you don't put fairy liquid in the petrol tank, you know. And so I think if people know what they want, you know, and otherwise it just, you know what you want, tell me. You know, I remember doing a thing with Phil Manzanera in the studio, and he was brilliant creative mind, and we ended up taking the AC unit front of that off and the lamp. We went and got the dustbin from outside. But it was brilliant, a brilliant creative session. In the beginning I thought, you know, what's he on about? You know, it's ridiculous. But then it was just brilliant. It was just like an amazing thing, you know.
I mean, it can't be amazing all the time as well. You know, a lot of work you do. You know, but those sort of situations, they're the gems, aren't they? I started to look forward to that. Like maybe out of 20 sessions, there'll be one where you really got to be who you are. Surprised, you know, surprised that you can. I did a Level 42 album, and the first thing I did was Batar on the opening of a track.
Fantastic.
That's you wouldn't expect that, you know. And I was like, "Are you sure, guys?" Because I just had it with me, and I think, you know, I know them because I was, you know, but I just sort of pulled it out and was doing a thing. They went, now. I'm like, great. I'm going to get away with this. And I did, you know.
Great.
Send it Batar with it.
Hey!
Oh no!
It just keeps coming.
Oh no! So as far as doing your own creative stuff, I mean, I was on the train coming. I was listening to Boom, which is obviously an amazing album that you did with Luis Conti, and that really, for me, that breaks down lots and lots of. It doesn't really don't break down barriers, but what it does is it crosses over different musical influences, certainly percussive wise. Because obviously playing tabla along with rumba tracks for me is just you know it's. You're really standing on sacred ground with some purists. But for me, I love it. I love it.
Totally.
I love the story where Aeto went to Cuba, and they all gave him a hard time because he was playing the clave the wrong way around. But everybody was dancing, you know, and so it doesn't matter, you know. It's important to
riding backwards on a horse.
It was like he was just he was probably playing it with his Portuguese butchers slippers, but it was like, you know, it was great. But and they stopped him. He said, you know, he wishes they would all just forget about that and everybody just get on, and it's music, and if it feels good and it feels right, then that's what it's all about.
I think that's really true. I think, and it's nice. I think in, you know, with the Calave Police, and I think we all know what we mean. You know, the hardcore Cuban Puerto Rican story, totally valuable, very important.
It is.
But I think the younger generations, what's good is I think they're really opening up to that, which is good. I think that's become a little bit less of a thing. I mean, you know, if you're in a salsa band and it's hardcore, you know, Montuno, then it makes sense to make it feel a certain way, and I get
course.
that and I respect that. But I
Yeah.
think absolutely we're here to break rules. I think all of us, that's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
our
yeah,
journey. I'm like,
sure.
oh, can I make this
Yeah.
work? As
Yeah.
long as it feels good.
Thing is, when you go to, I mean, I did the Cuba, the Havana Drum Festival
Oh, wow.
a few years ago, and I kind of compare like being there and the vast amount of work I've done in India with classical Indian musicians. When you go to those countries, actually, all of the majority, certainly of the younger and even the last generation, have got a completely open mind. What the people that don't often have an open mind, the clave police, as you rightly said, but people that have gone and studied in countries and come back and felt this is the only way you can do
Yeah,
it. So,
yeah.
but when you actually go to the countries and you work with them, in Cuba, I was doing tabla and loads of different stuff with artists there, and they love it.
Yeah,
They're like
of course.
into the rhythms. They want to know how the rhythms work, and
Yeah.
you want to start incorporating it into their thing. So it's an interesting zone, actually.
Very much so. Yeah, yeah.
The other thing I was listening to Miles's album as well, which is a fantastic album. I mean, how many albums have you had out, Miles? Have you had it, or is
Well, that's
The
kind of a
later
solo one, but
The solo album,
but,
yeah, it's
but
fantastic,
the other stuff is like.
I mean,
fusion.
just talking about from a percussive point of view.
Yeah, that's
this is,
very
you
much.
know,
Yeah.
Yeah, from a percussive point of view.
Oh, thanks,
it's
bud.
fantastic.
Yeah, appreciate that.
You know,
yeah, well, I'm
it's
really
amazing.
breaking a lot of rules there. There's even with the rumba stuff, I'm not doing it exactly the way it's done. I didn't sit there and write it all out and make sure there was. I just trying to get the feel across,
Yeah.
and trying to give it my own.
And do your own thing.
Do my own thing with it. Bring
Why
something.
would you try and compete with?
Exactly, I can't.
No,
That's what
it's
they
not.
do, and they do it so brilliantly. But if I
Absolutely.
can get that, I love the feel of it. So let me find my way to
It's a
interpret
spirit
that.
as well.
Yeah.
Your individual spirit comes out. isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
I mean, I was very lucky to have done an album. I did an album with Pete already and Luis Conti, and we did the second album, which is going to come out this year. With Mino Sanello and Pete and Luis Conti, but the weird thing is we actually got Mino to record his parts while he was on tour with Marcus Miller. So I went and picked him up from the hotel and we took him to studio in Manchester. Great. And I just got my an array of percussion instruments out because he didn't have anything. I thought we're going to play some tracks that Pete's already played on and Luis Conti's already played on, and it's going to be great. He's going to play all over it. And he got there and he goes like this. There's a microphone and he's just sort of like that. Yeah, go on then, go, and started singing on it. And it was like.
Great.
And it was like, just brought all this percussion in. But it sounded great. But what it is, it's got his signature on it.
Yeah, of course.
He's got that
a sound.
signature,
Yeah.
that sound that he's got,
He's great, yeah. One of my idols.
he's amazing. Ferg, you're always busy.
What have I been doing recently?
Yeah.
I've been back in pop world recently. I've been doing
Yeah.
80s, been doing ABC at the weekend, Jimmy Somerville last week.
Oh, wow.
Some orchestral stuff I've been doing. I did a good one earlier in the year, did Pete Townsend.
Fantastic.
Just ducking and diving, and I've been lucky to do it. I think the thing for me that's worked is rather than being a specialist in one thing, I've always done a lot of different areas.
Yeah.
So I've done the whole orchestral thing, and I've done the pure pop thing, and folk thing, and the hybrid thing we were talking about before, and that's always worked. In that I've always had work coming in from it. So if one area is particularly quiet, there's usually something else going on elsewhere. And I think that's a valid thing for people beginning to play and wondering how can I ever make a living?
Yeah,
because
versatility
versatility
Totally
in that
agree
way.
with
Because if you're just purely like the fastest double bass drum player, your lifespan is short, and you're just waiting for the next person to come along who's faster.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to make a living, and of course, trying to make a living is up and down. So the ability to kind of
You've always been busy though.
Well,
I mean, I've known you for a long time, and every time, it's...
And you never turn anything down. I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that's the thing. And I think, you often get called to do something and you think, not too sure about that. And then 3 weeks into it, you're trying to persuade all your mates that it's the best thing ever because you buy into it, and you kind of, you rehearse it and you understand it. And, so... Yeah.
Do you read?
Yeah,
Is that-
I read,
You do. Do you read?
Newspapers,
I read,
Oh wow, you read.
I read, but I don't really do reading gigs. As such.
Wow, right. How much do you feel that's?
Well, I don't really enjoy it, so I don't do it.
No.
But for me, enjoying what I do artistically and musically is like number one.
Yeah.
So I don't really enjoy
Yeah, it
reading
comes from
music
here,
unless I've
yeah.
written my own
Sure.
parts out. And,
Sure.
So
It's hard,
I don't
you have to
enjoy
play
it, so I
something,
don't want to do it. You know,
Yeah.
I don't want to be a plumber.
It's hard. That's the challenge in it, is being able to read it on the first or second or third attempt and to get some feel into it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Because
Yeah.
you're so occupied with all the nuances of, I did
Yeah.
something where I went out to Spain and played with an orchestra, and I walked in and there was a music like that I was given at the beginning of the day, and I kind of scanned through it and thought, was there anything particularly difficult? And there was Pirates of Penzance was in there, and that first 90 seconds was just orchestral snare drum. And I kind of looked at it and thought, I need to look at that at lunch.
Yeah, right.
And the session started, and the conductor went, right, Fergus, Pirates of Penzance. The first thing out of the box, and I
Yeah.
didn't know anybody else in the room.
Wow.
So the whole thing started. Here I am, I'm like 50 seconds in, and he stops it. And he goes, "Oh, Fergus, bar 87. There's an accent on the third beat."
Wow.
And I just said, "Oh, sorry, it's not written in my part."
Yeah,
And I
right.
pretended to write it in.
Oh, brilliant.
Well played. Yeah.
And I did it again, but
Brilliant.
it's not too often that happens.
No,
but,
no,
but
but
that's a big
yeah.
challenge, and I think with reading you have to do it every day.
And the
pretty
moral
much.
of the
Yeah.
story there is you have to take your own pen.
Yeah.
pen and paper is the thing
So
you
I
take to
haven't got,
say.
Yeah,
I haven't
of
got
course.
page
Pen
two.
and paper.
I mean, the thing when I started out playing, I was depping for a great percussionist in Manchester who taught me as well, Max Beasley, Senior, which is the great Max Beasley's father, and who's like family, and he used to play with this band called Loose Change, and they were all great session musicians in Manchester when there was a session scene in Manchester, like the BBC and ITV, and they were all people that used to get the calls to do that, and we used to play Azimuth songs and and all those great tunes, Sparagyra and all those great tunes,
Right.
but it was all written out.
Yeah.
And I hadn't read for a while, and I remember him giving me the first step and going, I can't do the gig. It was only a little local pub. Can you do it? And I remember them giving me a pad. They gave me a pad and they started shouting out numbers for the songs, and I'm going, oh yeah, Rio Funk, and I'm going, well, these are all heavy duty tunes, and it's just counting, and it was like that was really like a real learning curve for me. It was great that I did that for a long time, and I think one of the hardest gigs that I've done, and I'll be really honest with you, not because he's sat here, or a couple of them, is one of them was for the great, amazing film composer Craig Armstrong, which Pete couldn't do something, so he put me on the gig, which was amazing to do because I'm a big fan of Craig Armstrong, the composer. The second one was depping for this guy on kit for Vanessa May in Jerusalem, which was like, because that was another parts gig.
Yeah.
And without Stuart Ross on bass holding my hand all the way through it, I don't think I could have got through that.
Right.
There was no rehearsal. It was just a flight out there. It was like when we got there, it was straight to bed, wake up in the morning, and the gig was in the afternoon.
Yeah.
It was on an electronic kit, and then some of it was on Darabuka. So it was like being accessible, in like what Fergus was saying before, doing different things, playing different instruments, and trying to not specialise in one thing, but trying to broaden the horizon.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that, and luckily I got through that gig. I don't think I'd really want to go into that because I think I still have nightmares about that. But it was a great experience,
Yeah,
and
and
I'm
it's-
so glad that I did it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so glad because after that, it gave me a lot of confidence then to be able to go on and do other things.
Yeah.
And I really mean that. So. Well,
I hear
that was definitely a learning curve.
I mean, you certainly don't have to read all the time. I mean, in fact, when you do most sessions, there aren't, or particularly pop sessions, there aren't charts there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I find it a really useful facility if I'm like listening to radio or something or whatever it is, and I hear something, I think, oh, that's a great groove, and I just quickly write it.
Yeah,
down.
transcribing.
And
Yeah.
transcribing
That's a different
stuff,
thing altogether, yeah.
and that's the kind of that's the facility.
For
which
me,
certainly
I
comes
think
through really-
transcribing is the most, probably for me anyway, the most important aspect of learning an instrument. Whether it was with various percussion or tabla or whatever.
Yeah.
For me, transcribing it was the most important thing.
Yeah.
Because you spend so much time within that little
Absolutely
area of
yeah.
music, in extreme detail.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember seeing when I was 16, my first time to New York, and I saw Airto playing with Gil Evans. My dad took me to watch it, and all he had was a pair of shoes, 4 cowbells, and a tambourine. And I was like, "That's the percussionist. That's his setup. That's what." But I never forgot that. I thought, if there's a way in which I can work, and if I was given that and had to make that work, I would like to meet that challenge.
Yeah, yeah.
And I do still try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to get some clogs. That's
Yeah, clogs.
That's
Yeah.
the first
Yeah,
thing.
It's got
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, a lot of
amazing.
sessions that we do now. I mean, a lot of the time. I did a gig recently where it's different because I was playing with an orchestra, and that was like a pop gig with doing all those great Sister Sledge tunes, and but the parts were all written out. So there was an orchestral percussionist on the gig, great drummer, and then myself on playing congas and timbales and bongo. But all the parts are actually, wrote out. So it's like it's quite strict because they need to hear, the artist needs to hear those things.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time, it's great when I'd much rather, I know all those songs anyway, playing all those great tunes, but I'd much rather be able to have a slightly freer role. My
That's kind of what I was getting at. It's there was all charts for the whole band.
Yeah.
He had nothing. He just had a table of madness, and just was.
That's fantastic.
Free floating all the way through the gig.
But that's that being
and it was a real eye opener because
the creative
yeah,
mind.
exactly. And I was thinking, surely it's all written out, and I very quickly realised it wasn't. I'm like, oh, okay. Free reign, but it was musical. Even this close.
The first guy in Weather Report. Do you remember him?
Oh, Dom Romeo or the other guy?
Maybe not in the same way that Airto.
Yeah, same kind of vibe though. Yeah,
Manolo Badrino.
Manolo is
he's
incredible. Yeah. All those people.
No, but there was a guy with the shoes. And
I think that was Dom Romeo. Yeah, I think that was Brazilian. I think he was. Yeah, he was one of the first. And he was. It was the shoes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. That's brilliant. Whatever works.
But there's so much. I remember going to see
some soul.
Yeah. He's done it again. It's too quick. Yeah.
I remember going to see Renato Pascoal, the Brazilian Ronnie's, and the percussionist just had a pandero and triangle. Yeah. But you've never heard anybody play a triangle.
Yeah, exactly.
He slept with the things since he was.
Right.
It's just like. And the way Airto used to play pandero as well, with all the
amazing.
Breathing on it. And
that's what we used to do in India, is people just with one instrument.
Of course,
with a gatam or tabla, kanjira, morsing, or it's quite.
Yeah.
It was interesting for me in the beginning because it was very difficult to listen to. Once I really got into the Indian thing, it was so stripped bare, just sitar and tabla, or and then to get back into, more denser, bass guitar, keyboard.
Westernized music.
It was really hard for me to, because I just listened to that for 6 years, really. And then to get back into...
I can imagine.
It was really interesting.
Yeah, find your way back in, because your role as a tabla player is so integral in like a small raga sort of setup, you know. So then, the sort of size of the sound of tabla is so vast.
Yeah.
All the frequencies is incredible. So to find a way, and you've done a very good job, mate. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I can imagine that would be quite tough. Yeah. There's such a signature sound.
Yeah.
But you've done gigs when I remember seeing you playing with Massive Attack, and you were supporting Massive Attack on a tour with an artist. What was her name?
Martina,
and that was a really interesting gig for you on that as well, because you had some.
Yeah, we had a duo project for
it
was a couple of years. I think we did over 300 gigs on it. But so we had to construct the thing just out of two people. Yeah, so it was. But the other thing we said to it was we were going to use different instruments in every track. So I had a very interesting setup of like a very small bass drum with a cajon and snare drum, tabla, played a bit of guitar, played some didgeridoo. She played log drums, keyboards, sang.
Yeah,
and she's very theatrical looking. So it was a successful thing. But I think not quite the same as. But I know what you mean. The use of space.
Yeah.
And you kind of I mean we've all sat in Wembley Arena or somewhere and played a kick drum and it's filled the room.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like. Okay, all this other stuff, we've got to cram it in somewhere and try and...
Very true.
I think that's the perfect music making scenario, is a duo. Not only, in terms of sounds, but in terms of connectivity.
And in terms of profit.
In profit as well. There's profit in that, you get £17 instead of £14.80.
But as far as that setup's concerned, that you were playing there, more of a hybrid setup, so like percussion and a bit of kit as well, and so you were creating the parts of the drummer and creating sort of the percussive parts as well, so filling the holes or the frequencies, the sounds. That's very interesting, because most people now, a lot of drummers I know, are being asked, and percussionists, to some of
Incorporate.
the smaller gigs that we all get, the bread and butter gigs, if you like. We don't want to really say that, but the sort of smaller gigs that we all do, that where we get a regular work from around town, where we're taking a small bass drum and a cajon and a conga and some bongos, you know, and be a small snare drum. You know, it's all changed really, because I remember growing up, it wasn't really like that. There was always like a drummer and a percussionist, and now people want different flavours when they're
there was
playing
less
music.
percussion available, really, as well. And,
Very much so.
There's a huge variety of stuff available now.
Yeah, from all the companies.
Well, that was the thing.
Yeah.
You just couldn't find percussion when I started. You know, I couldn't wait to go to America for the first time to tour, to actually be able to go to half of the shops, and, you know, in New York.
And you bought that as well, didn't
and
you?
I bought everything. I could.
You do. You hoard everything. Yeah, spend all your tour money on gear. Yeah.
But you just couldn't
I think we've
find
all
it.
done
Now
that.
the internet, you know,
Yeah, exactly.
have it delivered, you know, the following day.
Yeah.
It was so hard to get a cajon.
Yeah, it was.
It was so hard to get a
Another
cajon.
variation.
I think the first one that I ever saw was World Beat. You know, there was a World Beat cajon, and I saw it in a magazine, but nobody had it. You couldn't order one. Nobody. And now look at every company does cajons.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and there's so many to choose from. I mean, for me, you know, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here, but you know, I just think it's gone a little bit over the top. I think that as long as you get a good sounding box, which is what it is, and it's got all the right frequencies, bass frequencies, and I just think that's
these.
Of course,
And
of course
this.
it is. Yeah.
I mean, where it's valuable is when you've got really different ones, like the Peruvian one, you know, the bass one that you play on the sides.
Yeah,
and,
very much so. Yeah.
You know, that's very.
I think it takes you a long time to realise what a good sounding instrument is.
That's true. Yeah,
I mean, the
very true.
amount of kind of just on a simple level, the amount of tambourines I went through before I actually realised what a good tambourine was. You know, so you buy one, and you think, oh no, this is better, this is better, and 20 years later you think, oh no, that's actually what a tambourine should sound like. And the same with all instruments, and you know, it's a real journey of kind of just enlightenment, if you like. You know, realising, self-realisation of what everything sounds like and how everything should work together. I think there's a lot in that.
I agree. I've bought a few cymbals over the years, and then I've like maybe given them away or sold them. I haven't sold very much. So I'm a bit of a hoarder. We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
We know we all do it, but now on reflection, there's a few that I think, oh man, I'm 15, 20 years down the line. I think I'm a slightly more improved musician. I probably shouldn't have let go of that thing. That cymbal that I thought wasn't that great, maybe it was fantastic, and it was these that weren't working. I think I've done a bit of that.
And these,
and these, you know, like how best to draw out.
Yeah, and
the
it's
sound
like
of the
you'd
instrument.
identify now in the music that you're playing.
Yeah,
I've done that as well. I've done that and got on a session and I've been playing a shaker, and they've gone, yeah, have you got another one? I'll play this one. And as I'm playing this one, like this one, I'm thinking, yeah, this is quite louder, more dense. This is softer. And then they go, and I'm thinking to myself, I wish I'd have brought the other one that's on my kitchen table at the moment. You know,
Of course,
of course.
Yeah. But it's I mean, with gear, is there anything your favourite piece of percussion gear? Miles, go. Anything that you
Probably an Udu.
I do.
Probably. It's not necessarily something I'm the greatest exponent of, but as an instrument, its versatility, I think the you know, we were talking about going on the journey of finding things. When I was quite young, I got to go to New York, and I'd seen Minu playing the Udu with Sting.
Fantastic.
And that blew my mind. I was like, what is that thing?
With
I
fragile.
have to, exactly.
Yeah.
I have to have that.
Fantastic.
And so that was my journey. It took me about 2-3 years before I eventually found one, and I got the Giorgini one, you know.
I was just going to
That's
ask
the
you.
one, you know, and I waited, you know, and so I have a real love affair with that. It's such a complete instrument. It's not that distant from tabla, and it's, you know, as you know, and gatam, and you know, that whole
It's
thing.
amazing the first time you hear Udu, though, isn't it? It's really, I remember seeing Nana Vasconcelos do
I was
it
just going to say,
it's
with a
nice.
glass,
with a couple of
glass.
It's sat at the
Massive,
front, and he had that and a couple of wood blocks.
Exactly.
And he did a solo on that, and I'm like,
And you're like,
oh,
you can do that.
What was that?
Yeah, exactly.
Where did that
Yeah,
come
that,
And the way he used to
amazing.
do that kind of loop station stuff, before loop stations were having 4 mics
Yeah.
with different delays and build up a
Amazing.
whole kind
Yeah,
of...
exactly.
Yeah.
He was doing the loop station stuff. Like
I mean, I
30
love
years ago.
all the instruments, but I think maybe that's the, you know, often, you know, there'll be the one I'll just sit down and I'll just play, and I'm just happy
It's a
to play
satisfying
it.
instrument.
Very satisfying
Yeah, it is,
instrument,
yeah.
very sort of self-contained. So
It's a hard one because I get asked this a lot in interviews, and I always end up, you know, saying
Changing your mind.
No, I say I don't have one because it's all my family. That's
Well,
what I normally
yeah.
say in interviews. No, but it's true. It's
I'd agree
Trying
with
to
that.
choose your
Yeah.
favourite child.
Yeah, it's true. It's true, and also they all have kind of different you know, different applications in different arenas. I mean, in terms of learning and study and complexity and finesse, and I suppose you probably end up being the tabla. Would be my was the instrument that's taken me the most to get anything out of, over the years.
Yeah.
So, but it's a tough one.
Mm.
Tough one. That and the egg shaker, of course.
Thank you. Fergus?
Well, it's funny. Udu is one of my favourite instruments. Is in fact the liquid Udu. You know, the liquid Udu that moves around, and I find myself playing that a lot. I've got into playing handpan quite a lot recently. Vast handpans and kalimbas. But I think probably my favourite instrument is that pitch bendable rototom.
Oh, cool. Brilliant.
I love that. You know,
great.
It's just an old Remo rototom with a pedal on it, and it has the same effect as a talking drum, or like playing loads of concert toms. You know, and often find when you're doing a session, producers are looking for different ways to get from one section to another.
Yeah.
So how do I get from the A section to a B section, but without doing a standard drum fill, or without doing without doing a cymbal swell or whatever?
Great.
And that often gives me that option.
Great
you know,
transition instrument.
Great transition instrument.
Oh, brilliant.
And I think. I like playing that.
Oh, nice.
My favourite percussion instruments are really the gifts that people give me, to be really honest. You know, I've been very lucky that all my friends are percussionists. The gift of music, of course, the best answer. No, the thing that Miles is about to give me. No, I've had percussion instruments from my dear friends Louis Conti, Bashiri Johnson, Pete, yourself, over the years, but those kind of things, because I would never have sourced them. So really, what that is for me is they're great gifts, because it's not really something that's manufactured. You know, it's like when you're out and those little rattles that you got in was it Sri Lanka? No, you didn't go to Sri Lanka. Where did you go to? You and Pam?
In Burma.
The little wooden things, from a. They got that little nail thing.
The metal ones.
Yeah, the metal things. Yeah.
Wooden metal things.
Wooden metal things.
Have you got them now?
Wooden metal plastic things.
They're from Burma.
From Burma, you know, those things. I mean, I've never been to Burma. I'd love to go, but I mean, you know, those things I would never have sourced them.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, I love the congas. You know, I love the Pearl folkloric congas, which I use all the time. You know, I'm well known for using those. But you know, conga drums, I love conga drums, but it's about the toys and about the small things for me personally. You know, it's about colours, like we were talking about before. You know, Dave Hassel, who's a friend of mine who's in Manchester, for all of his students at the Royal Northern College of Music, has a bag, makes everybody go out and gets a bag for life from one of the supermarkets, and in that he makes them buy a tambourine, a cabassa, a shaker, a pair of claves, and a triangle, and he has a triangle, and they have an aguero, and they have to have that. I think that's a great starting point.
Interesting, yeah.
That's
a lot of homework right there.
Yeah, that's it. It is, isn't it? Yeah. To sit down and study that.
Yeah.
That's the first 20 years.
Yeah.
I remember my first ever session was with a band called Thunder. Do you remember Thunder?
Oh yeah,
of course, yeah.
And that was just one box of. There was a couple of drums and stuff like that, but one box of hand percussion. That was it. There was nothing. I didn't own anything else. You know, so it wasn't like I had a big collection at the beginning.
You wouldn't really associate percussion with them, would you? It's kind of
unusual.
unusual.
It's funny because I was
session,
going in. I had to tell it was tableau and loads of funny things. I went in the studio and it's all like, you know, skull and crossbones everywhere, and that they'd done the. Do you remember Jacob's down in Jacob's studio down in Aldership?
I never went there, but
yeah. And skull and crossbones. There's me tabla and me shakers, you know.
Shakers.
I mean, I think that I would say that it touches on something else, that when you go with whatever instrument you have, or instruments you have, that you kind of know them. You understand them. You understand what they can do, their role, so that you don't get caught out. You know that. True, actually, like be prepared. And there's a little bit sort of like the young session guy coming up, girl. Simple things like quality of your instruments, the care with which you have for your instruments. I'm just trying to pass on that kind of. It should be about you playing. It should be about the music, and it is. But turning up with good flight cases, turning up with good equipment that you care for, showing that you have pride in the thing that you do. I think I've noticed that made quite a difference to some of the work that I got. And sometimes I'd take something out of the box that I hadn't really practiced, and sort of think, yeah, it'd be cool to put that on there. And I realised very quickly I wasn't that well versed in that thing, even down to Guiro playing Guiro at a certain tempo. If you haven't really worked at that, as we know, you can get very quickly caught out. So, sort of smart mental preparation,
No, the opposite for me with that was I was doing an AR Rahman session, and we'd been a few days into it, and I thought I was itching to get to the tabla, Yeah. So finally we got to the end of the few days recording, and he said, "Oh, we're about a tabla on this." So I start playing tabla, and then he comes over the counter, "Oh, it's too Indian." Can you make it sound less Indian? So so I tried slightly different technique, And so no, it's still too Indian. In the end, after 3 or 4 turns. I've had to turn them round the other way and play them like bongos, and that was what he wanted.
Wow.
So it was
Okay,
it's
there
a
you go.
inversion of you're right in what you say, but this is a funny inversion of that.
There you go.
So they wanted that essence, but they didn't.
He didn't even want that. He wanted this. Yeah, maybe you're right. Actually, he wanted that kind of flavour. Maybe.
Yeah, the flavour.
But it didn't even sound like tabla.
But you have the skill set to be able to do that. That's the thing.
Actually,
you have
I
the knowledge.
didn't need any tabla.
Well, not as much. Yeah, that's true. I suppose you just turn around.
Great, give him my number. That's fantastic.
But you had to be open-minded enough to do it.
True, exactly.
That's the thing.
That's what I mean. Not kind of. But that's not what this instrument does. I can't. But because you know
Spirits, Keith Jarrett's Spirits. It's an album he recorded in his garage, and he was never going to release it, and his friend heard it and said, "Oh, you've got to release it." But it's brilliant. He plays everything, like flutes, but he plays tabla on it. So originally I got it because it had tabla on it. So I got it
you thought,
and listened to it, and it's like, oh, it's horrendous. So I threw it away, and then a few years later, somebody got me that album for Christmas.
Okay.
And I was like, one of those presents you open, like, thanks for that. Anyway, I put it on, it blew my mind.
There you go.
It's like, but because of the way he's playing it with mallets, and my mind was closed at that time. Because of all the learning that I'd done within the Indian genre. And then it was like, wow, it's just amazing what he does.
No, that's great. That's really important.
Keith Jarrett.
Yeah.
First session in the studio. I can't. God knows.
Was it that long ago?
It was a long time ago. I think the first session was with Beethoven.
Oh right, yeah.
That was a long time ago now.
Puppy.
I don't know. I think it's always just been. I mean, percussion is such a vast area that you can only really hope to scratch the surface. In your lifetime. I could live to be 1,000 and still see another peak to be assailed.
Another shaker to buy.
That's it. So I mean, jack of all trades works to a certain point, and I think, but an open-minded approach and a willingness to kind of. Just listen to people and, space, knowing what is applicable at an applicable time. We were saying earlier about this percussionist in Los Angeles, Ralph McDonald, who turned up to a session, and the producer said to him, "Oh, listen to the track." He listens to the track. He says, "Okay, Ralph, what do you think it needs?" And he says, "Well, actually, I think it's complete as it is. It doesn't need anything." And he says, the producer says, "That's exactly what I thought. I just wanted to hear it from you." And pays him, and he goes, "Oh."
There you go.
So
fantastic.
What about you?
It's funny you should say that about Ralph McDonald, because I was lucky enough to work with the late great Phil Ramone, the producer, and he hired he hired him in with doing all the Barbra Streisand and working on with Billy Joel and stuff, and he said that he used to hire Ralph McDonald, and he used to come in and he used to say exactly the same thing. If he didn't need anything on, he would say it doesn't need anything. There's there's no space really. I'm not going to add anything to that track, and I think it's having that discipline.
It's leaving your ego at the door as well, and realising that you're only a small cog in a big wheel,
And a CD release, they wouldn't. The albums I didn't play on.
It's true. But what
got paid for.
What he actually did is even the tracks that he didn't. Apparently, this is what Phil Ramone's told me. Even the tracks that he didn't actually record on, he didn't end up recording on. They would play him the track, and he'd put his headphones on and just play a shaker along with it. And then he'd be listening to the track. He'd never heard it if there was nothing written out or anything. And then he'd stop and he'd go, "Yeah, I feel we can work on it," or "No, there's nothing really more that I can do."
It's a good one. I may have even heard that, because I think, just as another little tip, often the way into a tune, I don't know if you guys do I often will do exactly that. I'll probably play a shaker first,
I do.
just to go through the tune, show them the influence that the shaker could have if it's somebody doesn't fully understand, and then I'm thinking what could complement. It's a great way.
It also sets up your time zone as well.
Well, of course, your own little click,
Yeah.
definitely.
And you've got something to build on. You know,
Absolutely.
if you go in there, it's like the Steve Gadd thing where he says he goes into a session and the first thing he, invariably plays is just boom, gat,
Yeah.
and boom,
Yeah.
gat, because you've got something to build on. You've got somewhere to go.
Exactly, and it takes confidence to do that.
Yeah, it does.
It
Big
takes a
time.
little bit of time.
Because if you just met the people,
Yeah.
I think you have
And
to
you
see
feel
it
like you're being
abstract,
judged.
though. You see it outside of without your
Yeah, yeah.
personality involved.
Absolutely,
It's
exactly.
your ego.
Egoless, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why I said the sound module, because it becomes like an abstract thing.
Yeah.
If you think of yourself like that,
no, it's true.
press my buttons.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, if you remember that it's about a piece of music, not you.
That's true.
You know, that's a biggie, isn't it? You know, and I definitely made those mistakes when I was much younger. I kept trying to. I've just heard a great record by one of my heroes, any of the people we've all mentioned, the great percussionists are going, I want to do that on this. Didn't really have the same facility, so I'm trying to cram it on, and a few very nice, polite producers would go, let's just, learning quickly and realizing it's okay. Like I said earlier, just a tambourine here on this chorus will suffice. It's cool, and when you start to understand that and then take pride in that and be confident and make that feel really good.
It takes experience, though, doesn't it, to get to that
it
stage? Because
does.
you're there in the studio with a load of people looking through
expecting
a window at you.
magic,
Yeah, of
and you're like, oh, what do I do?
You've
But
got the whole
actually,
track with a bell on the last note.
yeah,
That takes confidence.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
As much as the schooling thing is involved as well. I mean, you listen to, a lot of the reggae artists, and you listen to their percussionists.
Absolutely.
You think about, we're talking about gear, and those are the creative, for me, being able to play grooves out, play bottles, play, those little, it's like we're jamming, we're just dead,
Bob
very,
Marley,
dead easy, like that. But you take the little out of it.
Yeah.
It's like a little guitar riff.
It's
isn't it?
a different,
Yeah.
and that's so much part of the song. As our roles of percussionists, it's about when he went in and heard that track and he just thought, I'm going to put this on, and then everybody went, wow, that sounds amazing. Can you do that every 4 bars? And he was like, yeah, all right.
Yeah, no worries.
What that's about.
But the confidence.
Got 2 teaspoons and a bottle. And then all of a sudden a little bottle, and all of a sudden it's high pitch, it's got the resonance, and that's the kind of thing that for me, that's the kind of thing how we can be musical.
Totally,
that,
It's funny, a funny story that I have with that is that there was one session I'd gone to, and I hadn't done anything. I had got there, and I didn't realise they were listening back to the track. I had the studio mics on, and I was just emptied out a box of shapes when it's done. And then the guy runs in. Wow! What was that?
Yeah.
That was amazing. So I had to put it all back in, listen to the track, and then
tip it out. I broke it now as well.
Yeah, of course.
It was incredible. What was that?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
But as far as advice to younger musicians coming up and wanting to get into sessions, I it's really a weird thing for me, because growing up in the 80s and everything sort of had percussion on it. It was either, it was like, certainly in America, it was either Bashiri Johnson, Paulino da Costa, Louis Conti, Lenny Castro, the great Lenny Castro. It was all those great percussionists on the pop stuff I was listening to. And then in this country, it was Miles, it was Danny Cummins, it was Louis Jardim and Frank McCarthy, and growing up and the westernized percussion. I feel a bit sorry for the younger, because everybody there was. I believe I wasn't really around in the 80s, believe it or not, but I was growing up, and so it was like there was a lot more work.
Yeah.
Then I believe, like sessions, and because obviously I'm from Manchester. Yeah. You're based obviously in London. You would have been around and seen some more of the sessions in London. I
think it's just technology, isn't it? As technology's come along, and people now have the ability, producers have the ability to do everything.
Yes.
So why don't they? And they just don't pay everybody. They kind of just keep.
I think it's also
themselves.
a lack of almost like music education.
Of course, yeah.
Because they just want the flavour of something, and then they can stick a loop on out of Apple Loops or whatever of this or that.
Yeah.
And that's job done.
Yeah.
So I think it's for percussionists to make their own world now. I think that the idea of being, in the West, if you look at percussion as a whole across the world, you know, I mean, it's only really here in the West that percussion's a bit part player.
Yeah.
You go to Africa, you go to India, you go
Yeah,
to the
sure.
whole of Latin America, Japan.
Yeah.
North
all these
Africa,
countries.
Really
Morocco,
integral.
The
Yeah.
majority
of
of the world, percussion is the, you know,
At
the
the
thing, the
forefront.
voice
Yeah.
of the people, you know.
Yeah.
So we're kind of a little bit disenfranchised with percussion in the West in a way. If our focus is, you know, on, you know, the pop area and what is, you know, popular music. But of course now we're in the age where we can see, you know, everything's there available to see. So I think we have to make our own world, you know, make our own world and future out of it. But you're right in saying it's disappointing in a way that there aren't so many kind of role models like people that you mentioned that are around now in with such proliferation.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of great players, and obviously they, you know, I mean, I know some great players that have tried to do things in London and it's not really worked out for them, so they've gone to the West End, or, you know, or they're, you know, so they're getting a regular income, and because there's not enough sessions, and you know, it's obviously probably around that time there was a lot of the bands that were out in the charts all had record deals and quite big advances, big record deals, and they could afford to start paying session musicians to come in like that. But obviously now, with all those, nobody giving out big record deals anymore.
Yeah, but by the same
Sounds
token, I
changed.
think there's never been a better time for music. I mean, there's so much music out there, and it's not so elitist.
For hearing it, for
Yeah, and it's
accessing
not
it,
so
yeah.
elitist. You know, if you've got an idea and you're you know, you've got no way into the business, you can come up with something, have it released, get you know, people interested in it.
Yeah,
put it on.
totally. Yeah.
And I think that's a great thing.
That's a great thing. That's counterbalanced with it free at source, though. So
that is a problem,
that
of course.
strips out
Generation
the
of course it does.
potential for young players to
develop.
earn in the industry.
Yeah,
so
of course.
it's a you know, it'd be interesting
the-
to see in 30 or 40 years' time what opportunities there are for music makers generally,
Yeah.
because
Perhaps I mean that's always going to be a problem for younger people, how they kind of live while they're trying to establish themselves as musicians and get to a point where they're going to earn a living. But that was the same, you know, when we were young.
Yeah, I was going to
true,
say,
wasn't
I
it?
shudder to think.
Was it not? I mean,
what I
it
went
was,
through.
you know.
But there's more opportunity then than. I mean, for,
It was-
you know, I think what you said earlier, the versatility, I think is a really important thing, and I think that's really more important now than it ever was. That probably wasn't so important when we started.
No.
out,
I think you're right. Yeah.
But now it's like super important. So I think to make a good living as an up and coming player, you've got to be versatile and really prepared to adapt to rapid change, more rapid change than we
Either
saw.
get really good at another instrument. So maybe if you're a drummer, we could play any instrument, but possibly the logical thing is to play bass. I know there are a lot of great drummers who play great bass. So you've got that, you can hop that thing. Also maybe technically, studio-wise, make yourself more adept in the studio.
Yeah.
The remote session thing, you know.
Absolutely,
That's
yeah.
definitely the way in which you
Yeah.
know you're going to survive. I think if you
Yeah,
can,
yeah.
and I think it's really healthy to learn another instrument. Again, understanding what's happening over the other side of the room, either the guitarist,
Yeah.
the bass player, the singer. You know, sing a song. You know, I forced myself to sort of. It wasn't really a song, but I forced myself to sing something.
Yeah.
So just put myself in the studio and go, right, I've got to deliver a performance, as poor as it was, so that I
Right.
could just.
Yeah.
Understand what the singer's doing, and I, you know, I'm amazed I didn't
What's
do it
interesting
sooner.
with that as well is that for me, when I started performing with tabla, it was such a different thing because before I'd been behind a drum set, and then suddenly there's nothing in the way.
suddenly
Yeah.
And I would like the
Exposed.
Yeah,
well, it was just that much harder to go on stage and perform because there's nothing in front of you.
totally. Yeah,
You know, and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
interesting to know that, you know, a singer will feel like
You have
that.
to
Yeah,
put your shirt
yeah, it
on.
really does. Yeah,
Or even a, you know, bass player or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. No, I
Do they
totally
feel
agree with that.
anything?
Yeah.
That's not
No,
right,
that's
is
a,
it?
that's a you've got to leave that in.
But technology has given people the ability to do that. There are now quite a lot of drummers and percussionists who do solo shows
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and do
Yeah.
triggering to visuals
Yeah.
and lighting
Brilliant.
changes
Course.
and all the rest of it. And,
Yeah.
and that can only be a good thing as well.
No,
so
yeah,
you
absolutely, yeah.
circumvent the being part of a band thing and be a mobile unit on your own
Yeah.
and only be responsible for yourself and do your own
There
product.
seems
That's
to be
the
a
way
lot
to have
more
a
live
life.
shows as well. Seem to be a lot more of the older bands going back out live. There seemed to be a lot of that. I mean, I was lucky enough to do some shows with Imagination, with Mel Gaynor, you know, on drums, and who was one of my idols, and it's great to play with him. So a lot of the older bands, you know, like Sister Sledge, Imagination, and you know, to get to play with them, because you know, before years back in the late 90s, I would never have even dreamt that I would be playing with those bands. You know, and how it's changed.
Yeah.
How it's completely changed. The music, all the older bands like you with ABC. You know, was touring with ABC, still touring, which is amazing. You know, but there's but yeah, as far as social media is concerned, and about being able to put things out and how you can put yourself across as an artist, I know Pete does a great job. He's a lot more on it than I am. You know, and we are. You know, maybe we need to be more proactive in that role. Pete's fantastic at that. Obviously, Ash Soane's fantastic at that. You know, that he inspires me when I watch his videos, because they're really musical. You know, watching what he puts out. Yeah, they're really, really musical. And on the conga side, there's is it Eric Perez?
Yeah, Eric Perez.
Eric Perez is fantastic. You know,
yeah, he does 2 a week or something, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does like 2 a week tuitional, and they're also. It's not.
He's got a great personality.
He's
for
got,
it.
yeah, it
He's
comes
got
across.
charisma,
He delivers it so well. You know, that's really, really good. You know, they're the kind of things that I would look that inspire me, modern wise. You know, like, as opposed to seeing people playing drums and percussion 100 miles an hour. Yeah. You know, and they were showing the chops off. It's really about. It still has to have that musicality.
It's the spirit as well. You're getting inside someone's spirit. I think that's what, you know, if you go back to, you know, Nana Vasconcelos, for example, and Airto and all these players, it's obviously they've got great skills and abilities and everything, but it's that spirit that comes out in their
they've got big personalities.
100%, yeah. Sure. I remember listening to a Weather Report record, and Bobby Thomas did just one slap on the conga at a particular point in the tune, and it blew me away for so long. I've been literally on loop listening to this thing going, why would he do that there? Why does that feel so good? Yeah. You know, and that was a real education for me. Not, you know, not all the other things he could do, but just at the right point in this tune. I'm just.
And it's amazing because I remember listening to Marvin Gaye album and. Eddie Bongo Brown playing the beginning of was it I Want You, I think, or maybe just listening to that and him opening that up and just the slap and the way, and it's like Bashiri Johnson on Never Too Much. You know, when that groove comes in and Yogi Horton starts playing the kit and then he starts playing the conga, just that first slap, it just falls right on the snare drum. Yeah. And it almost sounds like that high pitch, like it's a woodblock. It just instantly makes you want to move and makes you want to dance. And that for me is where I really started and where I come from, that angle. Yeah. And listening to like Earth, Wind and Fire and how much percussion was in that and the way it interlocked. And I always wanted to just try and recreate that when I played.
Absolutely, yeah, you know. Yeah. And sound is so important.
It is.
So important. Yeah. Feel and sound over chops all day long. Of course, I think we all know that. You know, you come to it and it's good when you do, because I sit opposite guitarists and bass players and drummers and everything else, and I'm just like, why is that working? And it's the placement and it's the sound they're making. And when that penny dropped as well, I mean, again, I'm constantly pursuing that and trying to get it better, but
we all are.
Yeah, we all are. But that definitely was a big one. Like, why is that so good? Well, it's actually just because it sounds so sweet. Paulina on some of those records he did, Don Elias sound on Jaffa's stuff, his sound, you know, killing. You know, a Bata there, and just the way sort of dripping feel he had on certain things. You know, fantastic. Bobby Thomas makes bongos and congos sound different to all the other guys, which still is a mystery to me. I don't know if you've really tune into what he was doing with Weather Report. He's still playing 2 congas and some bongos, but he just doesn't sound like anybody else. No. But he found a way to make a particular kind of sound. That kind of
having his own identity on it.
Yeah, which is important. You know, if you can do that, that's the hardest thing. I think.
Of course, the hardest thing, the most satisfying thing as well. Yeah.
Yeah, really.
And hard to, you know, particularly the swing stuff. It's very hard to make anything work with percussion on that.
Oh yeah, very much really so. Yeah, that's a task.
I remember you doing the Sister Sledge thing, which was, you know, thinking of you and Sammy Figueroa, you know, who played on all the Chic stuff, and he played, and it's amazing because you took him out of the mix when Tony Thompson's playing drums. If you take him out of the mix, the records don't sound the same neither.
Yeah.
You know, and me having to recreate that, playing with them, with the orchestra, you know, I was so, you know, I had to be, you know, to do some homework doing that and pay homage to him because he played it, you know. It's about paying homage to, you know.
Yeah, that's a good point. That touches on also not, I mean, sometimes I hear people going, you know, they're afraid to listen to others and learn from records, and I don't want to be that, I don't want to sound like that person. I know other people have talked about this, but I think it's really important. Don't be afraid. Go and learn, go and understand. I wanted to understand Minu, you know, I want to understand his head. You know, I'm very influenced by him, I think, you know, and I'm happy to do so. Look at it, learn it, try and take the concept and see what you can do with it. You know, I mean, don't be afraid of that. Some people other think.
I think that's kind of often overlooked, is the importance of the historical perspective of everything.
Yeah.
You know, and the realisation that the sort of drum kit and percussion in its present format has only been in existence for 100 years.
Yeah.
And you know, particularly if, I mean, we talk about who would you recommend for younger players to listen to, you know, and I mean, I suppose it really depends on the genre, but if you, orchestral stuff, if you go back to James Blades, people like that, his great book, Percussion Instruments in the History, or Emil Richards' Studio Techniques, any of that stuff. I mean, there's so much in there, and those books came out 40 years ago, you know. And it's often overlooked. It's timeless stuff, which is often overlooked by YouTube, who often you're kind of, oh, what's the latest thing or the fastest fill? Or
Yeah.
I mean, who would you recommend that younger players listen to kind of, you know, get a...
None of us can cello.
Who is the master percussionist? That was the question. That was the question that came up.
I think.
I don't think you can nail it down to one.
No, you can't.
Really,
of course.
you know, I think it's down to who influences you. You know.
Yeah, like what music do you want to make? Where do you want to go on your journey? And I think then recognise the people that have gone there before. You know, and yeah, well, that's certainly what I did. I mean, but there's some obscure things. There was I was trying to remember earlier. There's a Bill Withers record called Adjustments, which was just a really big record for me. It was kind of an obscure one of his, but it's a really nice sounding record, and I cannot remember the name of the percussionist, but I learnt many years later, I've told a few friends this one, that I thought it was one conga player, but it was actually two, but I learnt to play the two parts.
Yeah,
fantastic.
You know, I was like, I don't understand this. I mean, obviously it was an abbreviation, but I was like, that's such a great groove, but I was just like befuddled by it for months and months and months, but I just obsessively found a way eventually to learn that part, and actually it was all back to front. It was completely different and wrong, and it was actually two people that did it.
But it was your version.
But it was my version,
exactly.
and I learned something.
Of course,
that's the valuable thing,
yeah.
and that's an old record, you know.
Yeah.
I can more talk about influences. Minu's a massive influence for me. Bobby Thomas, Badrina, Alex Acuna. A lot of the records that Alex did, obviously playing with Weather Report, and then all the pop stuff, Al Jarreau. I couldn't really pick one person. I mean, there's so many. There's obviously all the Puerto Ricans and Cubans, Richie Flores, Giovanni, just mind-blowing conga technique. But for me, I was listening to jazz and world music, and so there's djembes, there's udus, there's everything. There's every kind of instrument. So it's quite hard for me to pick it up. But I was thinking about it. I think None of Us Can Cellos was the most exotic percussionist I'd heard when I first started. That certain records my dad was playing, I was going, what the hell is that? What is he playing? And why is it feeling that way? And the soundscaping and the mystery of like where, like you said much earlier about like somebody might just hit a bell at a certain point and it takes you to Bali.
Exactly,
and you're like, you know, again, I'd listen to Weather Report obsessively, and it would take me outside of myself and take me to another country and an exotic place I'd never heard, or even another planet. But it was the percussion. It was Badrina and Alex and all those guys. The little things they were doing, the little world influences,
the little flavors, getting your mind active.
Yeah, but I agree. I don't necessarily think there's just great exponents at certain instruments. But people who've got great voices and played on great records were the ones that really inspired me. And Nana, all the ECM stuff, that blew my mind. So he was
Bush dance.
His own albums
changed the direction of stuff as well. You know, people who.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, Colin Walcott.
With
Oregon.
Amazing.
Who was, you never would say he was a technical player at all.
No.
But you know, he had all these things that he brought in. Probably the first real proper world hybrid player there was. You know?
I totally agree with that.
And then obviously, you know, Trelock following on from
of course.
John Bergamo, who was for me the pioneer.
Yeah, he was with frame drums
before Glenn Velez, you know. But then obviously Glenn Velez, Lane Redmond, and all the people that followed on.
And Mickey Hart has done a lot with
Mickey
them
Hart,
as well.
But still, he's put projects together.
He's been really together in that world, you know.
And then with the Indian thing, you know, Harry Shankar was a great
Canjira
Canjira player,
Yeah.
sorry. Zaki, the amazing tabla player.
Of course, yeah.
Just all these incredible players. And at the moment, Zohar Fresco. I don't know if you've seen Zohar Fresco.
No, the name.
Framed on
Yeah,
player.
okay.
Ridiculous.
Yeah,
Just
amazing,
totally mind-blowing. So I didn't really come out of the Latin thing so much.
No.
The Latin jazz kind of, I came out of the world
Mm.
kind of
world
Indian
thing.
thing, which was slightly different.
About influences for you?
I think all of the above. You know, I did get into a lot of stuff that James Blades did, Nigel Shipway, Emil Richards, more percussive kind of pop players. Danny Cummings was the guy to be when you were
all
a
of us.
teenager.
Yeah.
He was the guy who had
was.
all the gigs. How do you get a major pop gig? And
Get it off Danny. Ring him.
you know, I got to be better than Daddy. How to do that? But I think, I'm just trying to learn from lots of different people, try and see what they had in their palette of sounds, really,
Yeah.
and take bits from everybody and try and make it your own.
Yeah, that's key, isn't it? Really?
You know, that's what I still try and do. You know, I'm still learning, still developing,
Never
and
stops.
life isn't long enough.
No.
Yeah.
And there's too,
Any
there's too much to
standout
do.
players for you that really-
Certainly as a pop thing, when I was a kid, I was really into Queen, I was really into Buddy Rich stuff, I was really into Stuart Copeland. As regards tabla was, yourself, Zakir Hussain, certainly his father.
Yeah.
You mentioned Harry Shankar is the standout Canjira
Yeah.
player. I think everybody agrees on that.
Yeah.
Minusonelo for his Udu playing, and Anna Vasconcelos for his berimbau and his kashishi stuff.
And his voice as well.
His
the
voice,
stuff.
his ability to kind of mesmerise and own the room as a solo
amazing.
performer,
Yeah.
and even own a town square with 1,000 people in it, you know,
Yeah,
and get them
yeah.
all interacting. I mean, the list is. I'm sure I've missed off a lot of people, but
Yes.
and you.
Well, how long have we got? No, same. Danny Cummings in this country, certainly. Danny
Do an
Cummings,
interview
of
with
course.
Danny.
Yeah, definitely do an interview with Danny. He's busy
love
with
him.
Mark Knopfler at the moment, I think. Pete, obviously, yourself, who I've known for you're only 28, aren't you? I've known you for 30 years, maybe.
I was born in 1928.
Yeah, I've never really known yourself because you know, as an aspiring musician, and I'm very lucky that I can call you all my friends because you're one of the busiest guys about, and you've always worked, always worked, and anybody looking, the advice that you've given, for a young aspiring percussionist and drummer, should really
Very kind.
No, and I really mean that. But yourself, obviously, Carl van den Bosch. Carl, who's fantastic and a lovely man, even though he supports Tottenham. Carlos Edwards, who supports Chelsea, so we don't forget about that. But he's a lovely guy. And then, and obviously, there are so many who feel very privileged to be here because there's so many great percussionists in the UK. And it's great that we get a chance to have a talk. So they need to have a mention as well. Also,
Satin.
of course, Satin.
Yeah, Satin,
everybody.
of course,
Will,
yeah,
of course.
lovely
Up
young
and
Will.
coming.
Yeah.
Up and coming.
Yeah.
I mean, fantastic.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Ridiculous. And very blessed to call him a friend. America, the great Louis Conte, who's always been my idol. Bashiri Johnson, who just makes things, who just is ridiculous on track. Paulino da Costa, and of course the great Sammy Figueroa. Lenny Castro. How can you forget Lenny? Yeah, he's a
Ray
monster.
Cooper needs to mention.
Ray Cooper.
Yeah.
I mean,
Ayrton Moreira, we've got to mention him again.
Yeah.
We've got to. Who is a pioneer with Nana.
Without a doubt.
And those, everybody. Sorry if we've missed anybody out.
There's too many, aren't there?
There is too many,
Yeah. But isn't that
Mungo
brilliant?
Jackson,
Oh.
Steve Croon,
Yeah.
Steve Thornton,
Steve Thornton.
Steve Thornton,
Thornton.
played with him, yeah.
Kevin Ricard,
Yeah.
Pete
Yeah.
Colpia. Do you know Pete? He's a fantastic
Yeah, I know,
percussionist.
yeah.
Pete Colpia.
We've got Dave Patman here as well.
Dave
Great
Patman.
bongo
Dave
player.
Patman,
yeah,
fantastic.
Trailblazer for the Latin
Dave
community.
Assel in
and
Manchester.
Snowboy.
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 London, yeah.
Shovel.
Shovel. Snowboy.
Yeah.
Of course.
I mean, Sudder.
Yeah.
There's hundreds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Davide Giovanni.
Davide.
Place was amazing.
Killer. Yeah.
Amazing. Singing,
Yeah.
playing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, where do we stop? I mean, really, what we should do is just put tribute on your track on your album. They're all on
pretty
there.
much, yeah.
They're basically all listed on there. Yeah, so
yeah.
big shout out to Miles's album. Listen to Tribute, the last one, then they're all on there. The whole, everybody's on
as
there.
many as I could remember.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah,
And a big shout out to Louise for putting rhythm back together.
Oh yeah,
And that is the
word.
big one.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
And James,
Yeah, and
Well done,
James.
who has to put up with us.
Yeah, right. Yeah, amazing.
It's been fantastic.
Yeah.
James is buying the beers, I think.
Yeah, fantastic.